Hi, I just thought I'll make a short video. I've received this book by Pigou, the one that I'm critiquing in great detail. The reason I'm making this short video is something that's ignored by most economists when we are looking at the technical nature of a person's work. What they fail to realize is that in almost all cases, economists are driven ultimately by ideology. When you look at Adam Smith's book, you come out with a feeling, clear-cut feeling that he doesn't really like the government doing too many things because the government messes up everything. Okay, so he accepts the government can do some things, but not much. And then you look at John Stuart Mill, more or less similar thing, but then it starts shifting a little bit more towards regulation. But when you're looking at this guy, and as I said, he's a Fabian socialist through and through, absolutely, undoubtedly. What I want to show you here by flicking through rather quickly is the table of contents and the volume. So, it's about how many pages? It's 860 pages. This is a massive book. Pretty much, like Adam Smith's and John Stuart Mill, they write pretty substantial books because there's a lot to write, I suppose. What you notice most remarkably about this particular book is that almost 90% is devoted to finding defects in the government. So I want to start by looking at, for example, the part 2. And when you're looking at part 2, let me see if it comes up here. How does it come up? Yeah. So this is the part 2 of his thing. And from there on it starts, and I'll just read it aloud. He just starts talking about the marginal social and private net product. So he starts defining what is completely immeasurable, totally speculative, and so on. But that's his definition, and he starts with that. And from there, he goes on to the theory of externalities. And, so chapter 9 is this one, divergence between the, can I just show it here? How do I show it? The divergence between the marginal, social, and private product, which is the argument of inefficiency. And then he goes on to monopolies. For him, monopolies are a big issue, which, as I have repeatedly shown, it's not a big issue. It's a relatively minor issue, and largely an issue of the government itself creating monopolies in the first place. Monopolistic competition he mentions here, but that's not really an issue at all. Monopolistic competition is pretty much like perfect competition in so many ways, and we benefit a lot from that. There's no inefficiency involved. Then he moves on to public control of monopoly, intervention by state authorities, public operation of industries. Now you can think of that. This is a so-called economist, right? And he's talking about public operation of industry. It's nothing but ideologies, right through and through. And then he goes on to industrial peace. So he's, the trade union movement and stuff like that. And that's not really the basic arguments of economics, actually, and mediation and stuff like that. So he spends a lot of time on labor, the hours that labor should undertake. By the way, this is 100% the same as what is found in the Fabian documents of the 1890s. So you can actually see the whole chapters. It's almost like a duplicate of the Fabian arguments. And then he talks about industrial remuneration, the need to interfere with and to raise wages. So you want to have artificially, changes in the wages. Then he talks about fair wages. There is simply no way that an economist can think of a word called fair wages, but this is only ideological. So this guy is fully, ideologically driven, and you can read that in his book. A national minimum time wage. So then he moves on to minimum wage, which straightforward can be demonstrated to be the most harmful thing in the world. But that's what he starts off by arguing. Okay. And then he goes to the problem of disharmony caused because of inequality. Inequality is his biggest thing. Fabians talk about inequality as the major driver of their arguments. And so economic inequality. So he's using that. He goes straight into the Fabian. So it is a 100% Fabian document. And anybody who doesn't recognize that and still claims to be an economist and, talking about technical aspects is simply talking nonsense. Basically, this is a Fabian document through and through, right? Subsidies for wages, rationing and stuff. And minimum standard of real income for everybody. That's not really what, we might argue, we might agree with a bit of that to some extent, as even Hayek would agree to that. But to have that driven in this manner, almost 90% of his 800, whatever massive document, almost entirely socialist document. So when we look at this and we go back to Marshall, as I've been demonstrating, Marshall's two students, one is Pigou, one is Keynes. And of course, Keynes' father was a Fabian, and not only Fabian, but his book was a recommended reading by the Fabians. So we're looking at Fabian socialism basically underpinning this whole thing. This is not economics. When you think about welfare, what is welfare? The wealth of nations is welfare, right? That's what Adam Smith talks about, and that's his book here. So, when you talk about the wealth of nations, that is the welfare that we need to think about. This bit is a complete distortion, looking at things that don't exist, the so-called market failures. Now it's a full-fledged industry out there. And from the basis of this particular thing where everything the government can, make use of to intervene, we now have also public health interference. And they're using all these arguments, externalities and free riders and all this kind of nonsense, which doesn't really emerge in any meaningful ways I'm demonstrating in my paper 5, which I'm writing at the moment. But I've received this book, and I think that popped out very strongly, and I thought I'll just share that information with you. All right.